You're listening to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast, a place for sex addicts to share their experiences of recovery, to help break the stigma, myths, and misconceptions of sex addiction. This podcast may contain topics of sexuality, sexual trauma, dysfunction, or other things that may be triggering, so listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. My name is Jason, I'm a sex addict, and I will be your podcast host for today. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode number 10 of the podcast. My name is Jason, and my pronouns are he and him. In this week's episode, I'm excited to share a conversation I had with Jayme, where we had a fascinating discussion about what it's like to be non-binary in SAA, among other things. And as I often do, I'd like to read a passage from program literature, and tonight at my home meeting we were discussing tradition number 3, which is the only requirement for SAA membership. It is a desire to stop addictive sexual behavior. On page 81 in the Green Book, the first line of that section is, "The disease of sex addiction does not discriminate according to race, gender, age, sexual orientation, class, religion, or other social category." On the SAA-recovery.org website, there's a section on our diversity, and down under gender diversity, there's a sentence here. "Our diversity includes members across genders, including women, men, and those who do not identify as either. Our fellowship is open to all, regardless of age, race, religion, ethnic background, marital status, or occupation." And there are links from there to a pamphlet on LGBT issues. And looking at that, it hasn't been updated since 2013, and there's not a lot of current information there. And I know Litcom, which is the literature committee for the ISO, is always working on updating our pamphlets and literature. So hopefully they'll be able to update this one. Yeah, something in this pamphlet, SAA and the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender sex addict. I did find this, which is pertinent to this week's episode. "Discovering and defining one's own sexual orientation and gender identity can be one of life's great adventures. This is often a matter of personal growth and often requires the help of outside resources such as mental health professionals or community support groups." And then there's a quote from the Green Book, and this is in the pamphlet. "Being in recovery doesn't erase our personalities. On the contrary, most of us experience our personal qualities as becoming more special, colorful, and vibrant as we gain abstinence and grow spiritually, and our individual strengths help us to carry a message of hope." At some of our meetings, we've been going through our meeting scripts and trying to strip it of gendered language. A lot of the introductions talked about, this is a place for men and women to share their experience, strength, and hope, or something like that. And so we've tried to do what we can to change that to people or individuals rather than the binary men and women. And one of the things that has happened since we've been on Zoom, a lot of us will put our name as, for instance, for me, Jason T. And then in parentheses, I usually put he, him, his to indicate my pronouns. So it's interesting to see more and more people sharing their pronouns as they, them, or they. Lots of different ways of defining genders. I found an article on transequality.org, "Understanding Non-Binary People and How to Be Respectful and Supportive." And reading through that, there's a lot of great information there, and I'll probably leave the link in the show notes for this episode. But I think it's an important thing that we recognize. And I was grateful to have Jayme share their experience, strength, and hope. So here is that conversation. Yeah, so thanks, Jayme, so much for joining us here on the podcast. I'm really excited.
Yeah. Thank you for doing this. Thanks for the service of this.
Yeah, it was interesting that the first week that when I introduced it at the San Francisco group and asked if anyone wanted to volunteer to be on the podcast, you were just like, bam, right there. So super grateful for that.
Yeah. So it's such a journey. It's just such a journey. And I'm just finally at a place where talking about it just really serves me and serves others, I think. So I'm happy to do it.
Awesome. So in getting started, I'd like to hear a little bit about what your circles are when you came into program. And we mentioned before starting the recording, pronouns. So
yeah. So my pronouns are they, them. That's kind of new. That's happened. I was a gay man most of my life, and then about 9 months ago, last June, I changed my name and changed my pronouns and came out as non-binary.
Awesome.
And to be perfectly honest, I think the journey's continuing, and I don't know where it's going, but I think that's the nature of the beast for me and maybe for others under that trans umbrella. So that's me. And I've been in program for about 5.5 years. I came in after a relationship ended, and I had gone away to get some help. But and while I was away, I learned that I was going away to deal with my anxiety and my depression. And it was there that I found out I was a sex addict based on my childhood trauma, which we can talk about. And my inner circle is I was addicted to hookup sites and whether they were on my phone or on my computer. And I just had many open all at once and just trying to I just got lost in hookup sites and so sex outside of my relationship. I am not currently in a relationship, but sex outside of a committed relationship. I have rules around dating, how many dates before I disclose and all that stuff. But mostly it is hookup sites and no anonymous sex outside of a relationship.
Awesome. How about middle circle?
Yeah, I think my middle circle is mostly made up of what people in program call character defects, but what I refer to, thanks to my therapist, as ways of being, because they serve us, like my perfectionism, my control, my people pleasing, my caretaking, and just when I start getting prickly, I know that I'm in my middle circle. When something has happened, I get a crazy email or a phone call or something isn't going my way, and I start feeling those ways of being that are so familiar and old. So that's mostly what I consider my middle circle. I don't have sort of like program middle circle. I steer very clear of my inner circle. And so, most of my middle circle is just what makes me uncomfortable. Like the thing that makes me like off kilter and not feel right in my body.
Yeah, I've just been redefining my circles, and one of the things that I found interesting was not just looking at behavioral issues, but of feelings and stuff that I hadn't really taken into consideration before. But certain feelings when I'm in that certain emotional state can put me in a vulnerable area.
Yeah. And, Jason, I mean, talking about that is right. Feelings is right. If I can be in touch with my feelings, then the rest of it is clear to me. I mean, I vanish. If I'm in my inner circle, I vanish completely. And so there are no feelings. But being in my middle circle, I go, oh, I am angry. I'm tired. I'm sad. I'm pissed off. I'm enraged. I'm frustrated. Like if I can name those feelings, and that's what happens when I identify, oh, I'm feeling like I want to control this outcome, or when I'm trying to be perfect about something my boss asked me to do, or it's really tied together, those character defects and feelings, identifying feelings. So thanks for that.
Definitely. And before we move on to your story, how about any fun stuff, outer circle things?
Yeah. Jason, I am grateful that today is 5 years and 2 months of sobriety, and yeah, woohoo. And given that amount of time in recovery, and in this program, I've been able to reclaim some things that I've always wanted to do. I actually opened a document. I'm like, I know I have a document called Memoir somewhere in here, and I started writing today. I write a lot. Whether I'm journaling, but I write in all kinds of ways. And getting back to writing, what has been really important to me, I practice yoga, I meditate, I read from a few different sources before I meditate every day. I walk a lot these days during COVID. And then, I get to the gym when that happens again. I go to a lot of meetings. I find myself going to about 6 meetings a week these days, mostly because that's where I connect with people and that's where I see people. I live alone. Apart from the cat, you may hear meowing in the background, but so connecting with people. And I have some dear friends. When I first got into program, I didn't think I had people in my corner and who would get me and let me be all of me. And I was wrong, because I actually had a lot of people, and then I just had to be honest with them and let them in. And so program has taught me that I can reach out to people in program, and then I can reach out to my sponsor even more, and then I can reach out to my friends, and I can reach out to all sorts of people. And so people just being with people in an honest, pure way is a huge part of my outer circle. And right now that's primarily through Zoom.
Yeah, I was going to ask, pre-COVID, were you doing 6 meetings a week?
No, but I think I was probably committing to 3.
Yeah.
There are a few. There's like a Thursday, speaking of outer circle, here in the city, there's an outer circle meeting on Thursday nights, and then Saturday and Sunday were kind of my meetings. But then I find myself going to a Monday meeting, and then there's a Tuesday meeting, and then I think Wednesdays are kind of the only day I don't.
Nice. Yeah, pre-COVID, I was doing about 3 meetings a week, occasionally a 4th. But with Zoom, it's just so easy. I remember hearing about Zoom SAA meetings in 2018. And it just seems so weird. And it's such a godsend now that we can be on meetings all around the country, all easily within the Bay Area. Getting up for me to make it to the Saturday morning meeting, I used to have to get up at 6:30 and be out the door at 7 to make it to San Francisco. And now I can just roll out of bed and hit click. So,
That's right. Click on the coffee, click on the Zoom, and you're in a meeting.
Yeah. Were you secretarying that meeting for a while?
I was. And yeah, I have, that was middle circle and outer circle simultaneously, which I don't mind. It's such learning curve in being a secretary of a meeting of 130 people and trying to watch myself go, oh, you're trying to please the group right now. Oh, you're trying to control the room right now. Oh, you're trying instead of just facilitating the meeting. And then when I really just sat back and let the meeting happen, and I was just like, this is what being of service is and why it's so important and why I honor like what you're doing here. to have a podcast about sex addiction, and that I found being secretary just helped me grow so much.
Yeah, likewise. Way back in the day, when I was secretary of the Los Altos meeting, and it was about 30 or 40 people, I thought that was intimidating. But managing 130 people, that's pretty insane. So
Yeah.
kudos to you for doing that.
Thanks.
So, I'd like to hear more about your story. Your what was your childhood like?
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for asking. I'm not sure you're going to like the answer, but
I've heard it.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think my childhood, before program, I probably thought I was super unique, and yet I don't think that's the case anymore, and I'm relieved to know it's not the case. But so my parents divorced when I was 3, and I have an older sister. She would have been 5 at the time. And so we moved in with my dad. When they broke up, my mom left. She went to go be with a man who she was already having a relationship with for years. In fact, he knew I was born before my dad found out I was born, because she was just interested in calling him when I was born. So she had been in a relationship with this guy, so she went off to be with him. And my dad was that was kind of rare back in the early 70s, was to be a single father, a single parent, have it be the father. Mm-hmm. And so nonetheless, it just made me want my mom even more. It made me chase my mom and eager to see her. And the guy that she was with, though, was an alcoholic and abusive, abused her, and was very threatening to just to the whole household. And then his youngest son was also abusing me and molesting me. And so that went on for about a decade.
Wow.
Yeah. That.
How old were you at that point?
I was probably 4 or 5 when I first started being abused. I don't know. This is one of those things that I chalk up to dissociation, which has been part of my story. Is I can easily I can still get overwhelmed and then feel like, here comes dissociation, which is less and less these days. But dissociation has served its purpose and has kept me but it's also kept me from remembering some key things. But yeah, so that went on from the time I was about 4 or 5 till I was about 12 or 13. And then the stepfather was still in the picture. We were back and forth. I mean, my mom was she was between him and then another man at some point. We had been kicked out of that house. I lived in a motorhome. I lived with my grandparents for a little while. We moved to a condo. I went to 4 different high schools. And then at some point, the stepfather actually pulled a gun on my mom and me. And most of my childhood, I just was waiting to die. I mean, if I wasn't dissociating, I was just thinking, good morning. When's it going to happen? When's the death going to come today? And I just didn't care. I mean, so I just checked out about everything. I didn't have friends. I didn't have hobbies. I didn't pursue things. I didn't care about learning anything in school. And no one knew about this. I didn't tell my mom what had happened in our house. I mean, I knew she was being abused, but she didn't know anything was happening to me. And then I told her in my 20s.
Wow.
And yeah. So she had finally left all the men, and she's been single for a great number of years. I found out that I am just enmeshed with my mom. And then so when it came time to find out about getting my own relationships, they all just sort of dwindled into codependency and chasing and fixing and what do I do now? And, I had no idea how to have a relationship, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's, in writing our first steps, it becomes so fascinating to see when you write it all out, you go, oh my gosh, no wonder I was doing the same things I was doing. Like, I was reenacting my childhood in this other
Mm-hmm.
way. I was re-traumatizing myself. Having anonymous sex with strangers was me trying to still get like some kind of attention that I was trying to get from my stepbrother. It was like, I hated it. I liked it. I hated it. I liked it. You know, you're touching me, you're beating me, you're shoving me in a hideaway bed. Now you're drowning me, but at least it was some sort of attention.
Yeah.
And anyway, I think I've done a lot of work around it that it's nice to be able to talk about these things with some objectivity, because that's not been the case. But I think I just went all over the place. But yeah, so my childhood was pretty rough. And so I learned how to keep secrets. I learned, I started masturbating compulsively when I was probably 11 or 12. And I was starting to get feelings that I was gay at the time. And I remember saying something to my mom, and she said, well, do you want to be gay? And I was like, knowing the right answer, was like, no, I don't. She's like, then you're not. And I'm like, okay. And it was a little bit like, I believe you. And part of it was like, obviously, you're not the person I should be bringing this to because you're not helping me. And then I tried coming out again when I was 18, and that really didn't go well. So it was just like secrets on top of secrets on top of hold on to your shame, keep packing things away, don't talk about anything. Sexuality is complex and taboo, and it so much got tangled up in between childhood and discovering I was queer.
Mm-hmm.
It took getting into program actually and therapy simultaneously to just start unraveling a lot of those pieces.
Yeah. So when did you actually come out, and where you were comfortable coming out? It sounded like, at 18, that was not a fun outcome, but yeah, I was, just curious when you became okay with it.
Yeah. So I had actually moved in with my mom when I was 11. I was living with her during all that back and forth and in and out and all that stuff, because my job was to save her life, just to go back and say that. So I was living with my mother, and then I had moved out with some friends and to try to live on my own. And we were so enmeshed that she was like, oh my God, are you on drugs? What's happening? Why do you want to leave me? And so anyway, I was only out on my own for like a year. And so I was 18, and that was then that I discovered, I was like, I'm gay. And I moved back home, and I said, I want to move back home, but there's something I have to tell you. And I came out, and she said, I'd rather you were blind, because then it wouldn't be my fault.
Oh man.
And my mother's a narcissist, and it's taken me a long time to see that, like a clinically diagnosable narcissist, not just like, oh yeah, she's a narcissist, and that she made my coming out about her. So it was so traumatizing, because the person I had just felt like I had been in the trenches with for so many years, protecting her and helping her. I mean, we would be running away and getting in the getaway car, as I called it, and I'd be digging in her purse for a cigarette and helping her light it while she's driving away, and then making her laugh at the same time. And so when I finally come to her with this heavy burden, and she makes it about her, and then also doesn't, there's no love for me and any support. That was really rough. But about a year later, I came out to my dad. I came out to my stepmom first, and she said, "Your dad's going to be fine." And sure enough, he was. I had grown afraid of all men by this point, because all men were like my stepbrother or like my stepfather. Okay. And so I was even afraid of my dad. And then when I told him that, it started to open up the possibility that I didn't have to be afraid of every single man. And in fact, I'm so grateful that I have a really loving relationship with my biological father. But yeah, so I think that helped. We need support. I mean, so much is there's so much that's made up in the world about who queer people are, especially in the 80s and
Yeah.
90s, that was like, it's when we were just discovering HIV and AIDS, and getting no support from the government and the political systems that exist, and just so many fights about like, no, I belong, and no, I'm here, and yes, I want to be seen. And so yeah, it was a weird time to be coming out, but because there was just so much out in the world. I wonder about people these days who.
Yeah. Raising my son, he's 12 now, and we started talking about the spectrum of sexuality when he was about 9, and
Thank you.
yeah, and he doesn't see it as an issue, and my wife and I have just mentioned that when two people love each other, it's a beautiful thing, and we have raised him like that, and so his generation, from what I'm seeing from all of his friends, is like, oh yeah, no big deal. And I can tell from when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s that there was a huge stigma with that. And I don't think I was a bully, but I was not an ally back then. And just trying to raise a generation to think things differently has been a gift that me and some of the fellow guys and people in program that are raising children right around now, that we're discussing as addicts in program. What can we be doing to raise our children to see things differently than when we grew up? So hopefully it's easier for kids in coming generations.
I hope so. I mean, I believe so. And then I also worry though about, other places, for example, Arkansas, with just the trans law that, just governor was so behind it, and then it got, then it didn't pass. And so, I do hope that just it's a shame this takes so long, but I do think kids your age, and as I think I already mentioned that I'm non-binary now, and that when I came out to my best friend, and then I was going to visit her at some point around Thanksgiving last year, and she said, "Well, how do you want me to?" And I had changed my name, and she said, "How do you want me to tell the girls?" She has 3 daughters who are 14, 11, and 9. And I said, so we talked about that a little bit, but they already knew. They're already woke. And they're in Alabama. They're in Birmingham, Alabama, and they're already like knowledgeable, and and so I'm putting a lot of faith in the children that are going to have this be a value, that all people are equal, so that we can actually live up to what we profess in this country, and that people can actually be equal.
Yeah. It was interesting for me I guess I was probably in high school. My older stepsister was gay, and my sister and I, my biological sister and I, and all my cousins, we knew it. She had always had girlfriends with her at family functions, and my parents sat us down. We have to tell you that she's come out as a lesbian. And it's like, yeah, we already knew that. It was several years ago, and so it was just it wasn't a big thing for us, but for them, I guess it was this big hurdle. So we have embraced her completely, and she's no longer my mom and stepdad are divorced, but she's still a part of my life. And coincidentally, someone in program knows her. And so we found out we had a mutual acquaintance, and so I got to tell the story of that and just how neat that was.
That's great. That's great. And you reminded me when you said, yeah, we knew. I remember when I came out to my stepmother back when I was 19, and she said she knew. And there was part of me, I was like, you kind of just stole my thunder. Like, I was something like,
yeah.
I'm like, sometimes it's hard to hide. Sometimes it's just hard to hide who you are. And, which actually brings me back to program. And, there was just so much that I was trying to hide. I was trying to hide who I was in all the ways we think about gender and sex and identity, and hiding all that. I thought I was supposed to feel shame around all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really realize that I didn't. Yeah. In fact, when I went away, I hope it's okay, to a place called The Bridge to Recovery in Bowling Green, Kentucky, is where I went back in 2015. And I ended up going for 2 weeks. I stayed for a month, and that's where I learned that I was a sex addict and I needed to come back and get a CSAT therapist and go to program. And oh my gosh, I was going to say something about about shame, is that the shame is not ours. I mean, that shame of my childhood is not mine. That belongs on my stepfather, my stepbrother. And the shame that I carried about me being queer is frankly my mom's, her fear. So I make it sound so easy because it hasn't been easy, but that has given me a lot of solace, and the ability to move forward is realizing that so much of the shame that I've carried as mine is not mine.
Yeah. And so when you talked about finding therapy and a recovery center and stuff, what led you from your let's say 20s on, what was the path that just really got chaotic and made you realize you needed some help?
Yeah. I had a partner for 11 years. I had two partners each for 11 years. 11 years seems to be my max. And so the first one I met when I think I was 25 or 26, and he was going to save me. That's what I was going to do for my mom, is save her. I thought that's what happens, is you find someone who's going to save you. And so it was a strange relationship in that it seemed loving, but it was we were friends, and it was a sexless relationship for 11 years. So you wouldn't have known I was a sex addict until I cheated on him. I went away to grad school. He had gone away to teach for a semester or two. And I got lonely. I didn't know how to be alone. That was my first inkling about, I'd never been alone. And I cheated on him. And then he came home, and, then I had to, end that relationship. And then, we carried on, and then we moved. I'm from San Diego. I moved back to San Diego. And but at some point, I actually walked out on him. I actually still don't have a very good answer, except I completely didn't know who I was. I just was in this place. I was in this liminal, weird place of, I give myself to someone. I don't have a life. I mean, remember, I was like, I'm going to die any day now. I think I was just under this, just sort of in this, under a trance of some kind. I didn't know what living was. And so anyway, that was my first 11-year relationship. And then I met someone just a few months after that. And that was a very sexual relationship. And then when I moved up to San Francisco to be with him 16 years ago. And at some point early on, about a year in, I asked to open the relationship. Thought, we are in gay Mecca. This is what This is what all gay men do. Let's open the relationship. Let's talk about it. I've read a book. Let's talk about it. I want to know what you're doing. You want to know what I'm doing. And he was like, I don't want to know what you're doing. And I'm not telling you what I'm doing. And so it really became don't ask, don't tell. And then it dissolved into, he was a flight attendant. And so as soon as he'd leave the house for his 3-day trips, I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't go see friends. I didn't go shopping. I didn't go fly a kite. I didn't go for a swim. I didn't do anything except get online and hook up with someone because I didn't know how to be alone. I didn't even know who I was. And so, yeah, I clocked at one point, like 2012 or 13. For some reason, I kept a log, and I had sex with more than 100 people in that year. And that's kind of a lot. That was a lot of acting out. I mean, given that I was in a full-time relationship, and wasn't connecting with him. So truth is he actually found meth. He started using meth, and then I didn't know what to do with myself. I was starting to have the trauma that I was experiencing with my stepfather was, are you coming home high? Are you coming home low? Are you going to be nice? Are you going to be mean? Are you going to come home at all? Are you going to threaten me? Are you going to yell at me? He wasn't physical, but it was still scary. And that's when I started getting anxious and depressed. And I've then since realized, I was like, oh, I'm reliving my childhood. Like I'm feeling my unresolved childhood issues of feeling very unsafe in my own home. And I'm anxious and I'm depressed, and I wanted to get hit by a bus. I had suicidal ideation. I didn't know what I was going to do. I hadn't gotten as far as like, I'm going to go get X weapon and do myself in. I was like, I just want to get hit by a bus. If I could arrange that somehow, that would be it with me. So he has found recovery also, but our relationship ended when I came back. He relapsed, and I was just like, I can't do this. If I gotta figure out my stuff for the first time in my life. I gotta figure out who I am and how to be sober, how to take care of myself. I cried on the living room floor for the first 3 years of program. Every day I would just sit on the floor and cry because I didn't know who I was. I felt so alone. I felt so lonely. And I have to say, it was the best thing I ever did, because crying that hard and feeling the depths of my loneliness, but not acting out. I just would feel my feelings and go, I am sad. Like that was programmed for me for the first 3 years. It was
not
really
covering it up.
And so, when you talked about feelings at the beginning, that's really what I had to do. I had to start identifying my feelings and thinking there's got to be more than just being numb in my life.
Yeah.
And even sadness and loneliness was better than numb and checking out. So that catches us up to getting into program. How I found program.
Yeah. So what kinds of, number one, how long did it take you to get into step work, and where are you in terms of working the steps?
Yeah, I going to that Saturday morning 8:15 meeting in San Francisco is that's, if you want serious sobriety, that's where you go. I mean, everyone in the city knows that. And now luckily people outside of the city and like internationally, we have people coming in from London to that meeting, and it's glorious. And I knew going to that meeting, I had learned that going to that meeting was the thing to do. I think I just started going to meetings and then you'd hear about another one. And so it was there that I had just gotten back from the bridge. I was told to, go back, go do 12 step. And because I had learned there, I had gone to NA, OA, AA, Al-Anon. Like every day we were asked, do you want to go to AA or Al-Anon? Do you want to go to NA or OA? Do you want to, and so we just had to pick one, whether it pertained or not. And so it was just about learning the 12 steps and seeing what the rooms looked like. So I went to all of those. And so I was ready when I came back. I was ready and I got it. And so I went to the meeting. I've been white knuckling it on my own for a while because I do everything alone. That's my jam, right? Keep it a secret. Don't tell anyone what's going on and just keep it all undercover. And so finally I had to go to the meeting and I sat at the table and I raised my hand and I said, I'm going to go crazy if I don't get a sponsor. And it was the funniest thing. Someone after the meeting, it was like, it felt like mafia moment. Like someone just handed me like a little slip of phone number on it. And I was like, is that how this works? It's like secret society. But yeah, so he was my sponsor for the first few years. And now I have a new sponsor that he's not so new. I've been with him for a couple of years now and it's been amazing. And so I worked all the steps with my first sponsor all the way through once, and then had done my first step again, and then had a new sponsor. And so I just finished about a week ago doing my first step for the third time.
Nice.
So I'm on step 2 for the third time. And it was glorious. I mean, we talk about our ways of being, and my core belief is unworthiness, how unworthy I am as a human to belong and to have any dignity. And so I did my first step on unworthiness, and it was just so powerful.
Awesome. Yeah. My first step was about, all about my acting out behaviors with pornography and voyeurism. And my second first step, I've actually done probably 4 first steps, but I'm on my current third time through the steps. So I've done like 1, 2, and 3 a couple of times, but actually going all the way through. So my second trip through the steps is I had learned through 4 through 9 that I had or basically 4, 5, 6, and 7 that I had some definite issues around fear of intimacy avoidance. And so I looked at my acting in behaviors, ways that I have actively tried to control not being sexual, and how that was just as damaging to my relationship as acting out with pornography. And so taking a slightly different angle on the steps was just amazing. And currently I'm on step 4 in my third round, and it's like I've done resentments, I've done fears, I'm not going to have that many. And all of a sudden started listing out a whole bunch of things that I hadn't realized that I have not been chronicling these on a daily basis as much as I thought that I had. So yeah, going through multiple times is definitely beneficial.
Absolutely. I'm laughing because I just called when I checked in with my sponsor today and left a message. I actually had a resentment against him from a couple of days ago. And so I left him a message just saying, hey, I'm saying this so I can let it go because I'm done carrying this. But yeah, those resentments can really stack up and hold us down. And the other, congratulations on doing the steps so many times. And I could use a go about, around about doing the first step on sexual avoidance too. I think that resonates with me for sure.
Yeah. I had known that it had been an issue, but I always thought it was this little quirk, this little problem that seemed to be coming up in my relationship. What good is it, being married to a sex addict if you don't want to have sex? And it's like, okay, I'll try harder. And then just realizing that this is part of my behavior, my disease. And it's not just, me shrugging off something. That there are some definite fears and other things connected to it that I needed to work on and work through. And going through the steps on that was really beneficial for me, and it opened up a lot of stuff in our relationship, which has been awesome.
Yeah, that's so great. As you were talking, I'm thinking about, of course, because this is about connection, and if we're not connecting by acting out, but acting in is also a way of avoiding intimacy and connection too. And so, yeah, and I haven't been in a relationship now for a couple of years. And yeah, I think the more it goes, the more afraid I am of pursuing it. And so I think, well, thanks. You have work to do, Jason.
Yeah.
That's one thing about the program is I always know that there's work to be done. So yeah, that's the good news.
So are there any things that you've learned from program that you want to share with the community or the podcast community, or with newcomers? Any messages that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I thought about that a little bit, and as you talk about newcomers, boy, people remind me when I've delivered my first step, they remind me just how much I cried, and I was so raw in the rooms when I first showed up, and I must have been wobbly when I walked. Like you could just probably, I probably just had a crazy aura about me, and I wonder if that may be true for a lot of newcomers. Just it takes such vulnerability and openness to show up in the rooms. And if, for newcomers just to keep, we say keep coming back. And I say it as someone who's been in program for 5 years and the people who've been in program for 25 years, that just keep coming back. It works because it really does. That's why I said yes to this. I said yes to this because I didn't have a meeting tonight, and I knew this would keep me sober tonight.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think about those fragile newcomers, and I have a new sponsee who, is certainly looking like a newcomer and feeling like a newcomer. And I just remember how hard it was to maneuver through a day sometimes. And the quicker you can be honest with yourself, I had to just be honest about everything and overshare with my sponsor if I had to make multiple program calls, which I didn't do very well for a while, but now I do. And I rely on that contact. But yeah, to be honest to myself and for myself. I'm not trying to be honest so I'm sharing something with someone else. I'm trying to be honest for myself. This is my program for my own sobriety and my own sanity. This program has saved my life. So I take it very seriously. I mentioned the shame is not yours. If you can even hear just a little inkling of some of that shame, just that you are carrying like a banner. I was carrying I need to be alone, and I just wanted to be right about so much. And I actually love saying I don't know these days. I love saying I don't know, and more will be revealed. And that's such a higher power thing. And so, being able to let go of a lot of things, will come in time, but leaning into some sort of grace for yourself, kindness, gentleness. I was relentless with myself my entire life. Why are you not doing this better? My perfectionist was just alive and kicking all the time. And I've been able to really put that aside and be kind to myself and think, what do I need right now? I love asking my sponsees that, and it at least stops them for the moment, because it's like, I don't even know if we've been asked that question in our lives before. My parents didn't ask me that question. What do you need right now? And for us to be able to identify it. Most of the time when I'm feeling weird and kind of wobbly, and I think, what do I need right now? I usually just sit. I just sit and meditate and just get quiet for a moment so that whatever is coming up can come up. Like if I can't identify it. So, and if I can just accept it, I don't have to do anything with it. I can just accept it. Just be like, oh, you didn't like that interaction when your sister called you earlier and she kind of pissed you off. Okay. Like I don't have to call her back and do anything. I just have to accept it. And feel your feelings. You said that at the beginning. Feeling your feelings. We are so afraid of feeling our feelings. And the truth is, I feel my feelings. They call me, this will give away my identity. They call me at work GDC, which stands for goddamn crier, because I'm a really good crier. But I do. I have big feelings, and that's okay too. Like it has to be okay. I have big feelings, and because for so long I couldn't have feelings, it wasn't okay. And now I feel like the spigot will kind of, the flow will be a little less at some point, and it is actually, it was probably about a year ago that my emotions were a little higher. And I realized that I am tired of being led by fear. One thing that, we kind of talked about is being non-binary is a journey. And I call it being out to sea. And I think program is a lot like that too. Like, don't know your destination. Shoot, I'm going to forget this, but Anne Lamott, who wrote Bird by Bird, said something about writing is like driving with your headlights. All you need to do is be able to see the road in front of you. You don't have to see the whole thing, and you'll make it to the end just by looking right in front of you. And I think programs like that, I think whatever journey I'm on with my non-binariness, I think life, just trying not to predict where life is going to go. I know it's so hard because I'm a control freak, but most of the time I'm led by fear. And if I can let go of my fear and have a little more curiosity about just what's next, and then what's next, and be curious and open, it's going to get me a little further. And that goes back to honesty. If I can just be honest with myself. So that's a lot of tidbits, but there are just so many pieces that I've had to just pull as I was ready to. It's taken me 5 years to get here, and I look forward to the next 5, the next 5, and the next 5, God willing.
Yeah. And there are a couple things that you brought up that I'm trying to see if I can remember everything with the not knowing where the path is leading. One of my friends in program, his trans daughter, is now looking at the where he, she, they is on the spectrum. For a while she wanted to be referred to as her, and this is my path. And he was just my program friend was talking about how now they're unsure and trying to figure out where they fit on the spectrum, coming back to the non-binary, and just not really knowing where that path is going, and being a parent, being accepting of that. And he just got used to calling her, and now he's getting used to calling her they. And so it's an experience for my friend as well as his child. So it's an amazing journey.
Yeah. And we have to be just open to the change, open to changing our minds about stuff. Yeah.
One of the other things that I thought about when you're talking about feelings and stuff, we were in one of the same workshops at the retreat a couple of weeks ago on on Hello God,
Yes.
the spiritual journey, and I remember you being able to say, I am feeling uncomfortable, and that was fucking powerful. Um,
I was
I
so worked up. I was, oh, thanks for
Yeah,
saying that. Yeah.
yeah, it was great. For me, I'm not a dancer. I like to groove to music, and that workshop got me moving, off my feet, and I felt awkward and uncomfortable, but I knew that I needed to get out of my comfort zone. So it was helpful for me. But hearing your experience, to my recollection, it was a song that brought you back to your childhood that
Yeah.
was being played, and I can see, now hearing your story, why that would make you uncomfortable. But being able to be in the moment and claim that feeling, I am not at ease, and in front of the group, that was just an amazingly powerful moment. And that was the takeaway that I took from that workshop. I was wondering how you're feeling on that now.
Yeah, no, it's great to be reminded of that. And I think that was part of like the tired of being led by fear and
Hmm.
trying to find my own truth. It means I have to speak up about it because I could tell I was feeling fear. I was feeling fear. And I also like to dance. So it was the song. And then when he was like, okay, let's all dance. And I was like, I don't want to dance right now. You're pissing me off and I don't want to dance. And I knew something was wrong when I didn't want to dance. And but I did off screen, but I but I was committed to being like, I want to be in this, I want to know what this is, rather than like revert to old habits and being right about being small or whatever I was feeling. I was like, no, I'm committed to working through my fear of
Hmm.
whatever I'm confronting. And it felt like a brick wall, but I'm willing to see if I can remove it brick by brick. And sure enough, just talking about it and saying it. And then we went off into like some little, one-on-one conversation.
Hmm.
And then we went back and I think I raised my hand again and I said, okay, it's gone. Like I worked through it. Like it was because I was able to say it. I was able to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So that was awesome. So,
Mm. Well, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. That was probably the one of the last things I was thinking about is I love telling my story and not because I'm like, I got an amazing story, but I love telling my story because I see how it serves other people.
mhm.
Or when I open my mouth and I say I'm rumpled, and like in Zoom, sometimes I'll get someone who goes, thank you for saying that. I hadn't thought about that. And I think you actually may have chatted me or someone had chatted
Mhm.
me after that and said, thank you for saying that. I felt that too. Or that was the more we share from our hearts and what is going on in our truth, which is the thing that's been so hard. We've been told to be small, told to be quiet, told not to emote. But the
Mhm.
more I do it, I feel like the the more I feel my own presence, and then the more I see that it helps other people. Um, yeah, and it feels empowering. And I love that it doesn't just help me, but it helps other people as well, which is again what I really
Yeah.
love what you do here.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and that was, it for me is, it I want to be able to share our experiences with the world. Um, so often our label of sex addict gets thrown around as either a joke or as a demonization, and that we're real human beings with real problems, and we reserve the deserve the respect of other addicts. There are plenty of podcasts out there about alcoholism and drug addiction and stuff, and the ones that I was hearing on sex addiction weren't that compelling. I hear it from a therapist point of view, which is fantastic.
Mhm.
Um, and I heard it from, churchgoers, which wasn't fantastic in my opinion. And, I wanted something more of hearing other addicts speak about their truths. And so not hearing something like that, it's like, why don't we do this on our own? And bringing it to Intergroup was, a real awesome thing. It took a long time to actually get launched off the ground, but, having to do a lot of research on the traditions and stuff to make sure that things are legit. But think we've found, a path through it. And so, yeah, I'm grateful to be able to do this. I don't think I don't know if I really brought it up that much on the podcast. Probably in an early recording I did that right about the time that I was thinking about doing this. One of my other friends, she does an alcohol addiction podcast. And I've heard other people other alcoholics and drug addicts share their stories about sexual trauma that they've had in their past, and that they start acting out sexually, but their main focus was, and that led me to drugs, and that led me to alcohol. And so hearing those stories, and it's like, I'd like to be a guest on your podcast. And she's like, okay, how about next week? And I'm just like, fuck. I don't know if I'm ready to do that. And by recording that and sharing my story, and having, putting that out to the world, and that one was not as anonymous as this one is. It got linked on Facebook and stuff. But it gave me, it got me beyond my fear of putting out my story. And, when I first did my first step, I was very fearful about sharing that with the group. And then the more and more I share my story, the more I'm asked to speak at a meeting or something, it gets easier to talk about. And being on the podcast, it's getting easier and easier for me to open up and not be so fearful about other people hearing this. I shared last week's episode with my mom. So, let her know that, this is what I'm doing, and I'd prefer you not to listen to some of the other ones, but, this one's a good one for you. If you want to check out what I'm doing, check it out.
Wow. That's really brave of you.
Well, thank you.
And important. It's important that we keep talking about it and sharing it with your mom. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. She was the first SAA meeting that I went to. As soon as I got out, I went over to her house and just cried.
Yeah.
Had myself a cry. So, she's known about my addictive problems. And so it was only fitting that leaving my first meeting, going there for comfort. And it took a long time to talk to my dad about it. But my family knows, my friends know, all sorts of people know. So
yeah, same. I have many dear friends who know I'm in this program, and my family, all my mother and my stepmother and my father and my sister. Yeah, they all know that I'm in this program as well. And I won't say that I recommend that for everybody.
Yeah.
But I don't want anyone to think that that's the case. But because I think, fellowship and having a sponsor, a higher power, and a fellowship is great and important, and could possibly be all anyone ever needs. I mean, I think it is that kind of a program where it can hold you, it can hold you. But for me, something that happened in my family. I don't talk to my mom right now because of her behavior, but it was around that time that I just decided I needed to come clean with everybody, just so everyone knew what I'm up to. So when I go, I'm up to a meeting, they all go, okay. And I don't have to answer any weird questions or wonder. It's just nice to be that kind of honest. But that's not true for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're coming up on our time here, and I am truly grateful for you opening up and sharing your truth with us. And this has been a fantastic conversation. This is awesome.
Yeah, this has been great. And it's great to get to know you, and have a
Yeah.
conversation with you. So thank you for that bonus.
Yeah, likewise. It's interesting. Seen you at meetings and stuff, but we haven't had a time to sit down and talk like this, and that's one of the reasons why I miss being at like the retreat face to face, is where at dinner or something you can find that time and just set aside some time and connect with someone, and this gives us that opportunity to do something like that. So I'm absolutely grateful for you doing this.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for asking. Thanks for letting me ask. And thanks for being such an easy person to talk to and share with.
Likewise. All right.
Thanks so much, Jason.
Thanks again, Jayme.
I'll see you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Such a fantastic conversation. I'm truly grateful for Jayme sharing their experience, strength, and hope with us. And in the conversation, one thing that stood out for me was the concept of not owning that shame, that shame belongs to someone else, that we seem to carry into us in our recovery process. Which reminds me, as a codependent, a lot of times I will carry other people's character defects, their anxiety, their fears, their shame. So it's a real reminder for me that I need to be working on my own stuff and not theirs. Another thing that really stood out for me was when Jayme was sharing about their mom being a narcissist, and I've heard it from a number of other people in program about having narcissistic parents. One of the podcasts that I listen to on recovery, the host has shared an article by Alan Rappaport called Co-Narcissism, How We Accommodate to Narcissistic Parents. It's a really fascinating article, and I will leave that in the show notes as well. And just to read a quick quote from that, children of narcissists tend to feel overly responsible for other people. They tend to assume that others' needs are similar to those of their parents and feel compelled to meet those needs by responding in the required manner. They tend to be unaware of their own feelings, needs, and experience, and fade into the background in relationships. And this may not be true for everyone, but I know that it touches on things for me. And so it's a fantastic article. If you feel that any of that connects with you, I would highly recommend reading it. And as I close out this episode, I would like to say I got some feedback around the music and recovery episode from last week. And I did get a number of songs from our emailer, one of which is by Coldplay called Everything Is Not Lost. And I've had a live album of Coldplay's and hadn't really listened to the lyrics of that before. And he and I were having a conversation that sometimes we recontextualize songs that we've heard before program and then after program and get a new understanding of it. And so I've heard the song before, but paying attention to the lyrics, if you've ever feel neglected, if you think all is lost, I'll be counting up my demons, yeah, hoping everything's not lost, singing out, oh yeah, everything's not lost. Just that glimmer of hope that when all seems hopeless, that we have a glimmer of hope in working the steps and working this program. So I'll play a short clip of that right here.
If you ever feel neglected, if you think that all is lost, well, I'll be counting on my demons, yeah, hoping that everything's not lost. Singing out,
this is a live version. I just really dig it. In the future, I'll be sharing a couple more of my songs and some more from other listeners. So if you have anything that you would like to share, any feedback on this episode or any other previous episodes, I'd be happy to hear from you. You can always email us at feedback@sexaddictsrecoverypod.com, and I would be truly grateful. So thanks again for listening, and keep coming back. The views and opinions contained in the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Bay Area Intergroup or the ISO of SAA.